Thank you so much, Chris, for that lovely introduction. And good morning to everyone joining us. It really is a pleasure to be with you today. I know how busy this time of year is, and I know how many of you are dealing with end-of-year pressures, budgets, reporting cycles, tenant issues, and everything else that comes with managing and operating big buildings. So I want to start by saying thank you for making the time to be part of this conversation, because it could not have come at a more important moment for our country's built environment. We are now just 3 weeks away from the 7 December 2025 deadline for registering and displaying energy performance certificates. And I want to say from the outset that I'm not here to lecture anyone, and I'm certainly not here to frighten anyone. As was revealed recently in an energy performance conference, we would rather incentivize than terrorize. So my role here today is to simply bring clarity, to offer guidance, and to reassure you that this process is far more manageable than many people fear. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this session, it's that you're not alone in this and you're not expected to navigate it in isolation. The whole purpose of EPCs is to improve how buildings perform, reduce operating costs, and help all of us, public and private, work with real data to make better energy decisions. Now, I'm aware that for many building owners and facility managers, this process has felt overwhelming, and I want to acknowledge that openly. Even some public entities, and I say this very gently, have been surprised how quickly the deadline has approached. But nobody benefits from pointing fingers. What really matters is that we use these final weeks constructively and that we give every building owner a clear idea of what needs to happen now, what can follow later, and where support exists. So let me begin with the single most important message, and I'm going to repeat it more than once because it's really the heart of what SANEDI and the department are asking for right now. The most critical step is registration. If you remember nothing else from my input today, please remember this: just get the building registered. Once the building is registered on the national system, everything else becomes simpler, more predictable, and more manageable. You don't need perfect data to take that first step. You don't need every technical detail lined up, and you don't need to have an audit completed. Registration simply brings the building into the national picture and allows SANEDI, accredited inspectors, and government to support you from there. So one of the concerns we hear from industry is we're not completely ready yet. What if something is wrong in our data? And my answer is always the same. Rather be registered with imperfect information than unregistered with perfect intentions. The reality is that data improves over time, and the only way we can help you improve it is if you're on the system in the first place. As of the 4th of November, we've seen just over 8,196 buildings registered across the country, and 4,539 EPCs have been issued so far. Those are encouraging numbers, especially considering that we started from a blank slate a few years ago. It shows that building owners are responding, that inspectors are working around the clock, and that the system is maturing. But we also know the picture is uneven, and there are still many buildings across both the public and private sector that need to get into the system within the next 3 weeks. I also want to touch briefly on capacity. We currently have 81 registered EPC professionals nationally. 81 people cannot carry the entire country's building stock, and SANEDI has never pretended otherwise. And that is exactly why the department and SANEDI launched the EPC Skills Development Program. So far, 232 new graduates have been recruited and trained with a target of 500. These individuals are now entering the market to support data collection, assessments, analysis, and the broader certification process. I mention this because it's important for people to understand that government is not simply issuing regulations and hoping the system sorts itself out. There is real investment in the skills pipeline, real commitment to growing the sector, and real job creation that supports compliance. Now, for anyone who's still unsure about whether their building applies, let me put it in the simplest possible terms without any jargon. If you own or operate a public building of 1,000 square meters or more, this applies to you. The same is true if you own a privately owned building of 2,000 square meters or more. And if your building falls into one of the key occupancy categories, entertainment, public assembly, places of instruction, indoor sport, or offices, then it's definitely within the scope. If you have a large office building, an office park, a university building, a civic center, a sports facility, or anything similar, please don't assume you're exempt. This is precisely the time to check and confirm, and our teams are available to help. I think it's also important to be honest about where government itself is. We are not standing here pretending that every government building has already done this. Many departments are going through exactly the same process as the private sector, identifying qualifying buildings, registering them, gathering their consumption data, and working with SANEDI to make sure they meet the requirements. So when I say that we're all in this together, I genuinely mean it. Government is part of the learning curve, part of the registration curve, and part of the compliance journey. What we ask of the private sector is no more than what we are asking of ourselves. Now, let me come back to why EPCs matter, because this isn't just about a certificate on a wall. The truth is that EPCs give us something we've never had before in this country, a national baseline of building energy consumption. We cannot reduce what we cannot measure. And for the first time, we are beginning Once owners know how their buildings perform, they can start making informed decisions. They can see where the energy is being wasted. They can identify operational inefficiencies. They can prioritize upgrades. They can plan retrofits. They can renegotiate with tenants, and they can benchmark themselves against comparable buildings. In other words, EPCs don't just tell you whether your building is good or bad. They help you plot the path to making it better. And in an environment where electricity costs continue to rise and where reliability is still a challenge, every kilowatt hour saved matters. For owners, energy efficiency is one of the simplest and smartest ways to protect the bottom line. I know that for some people, the immediate question is, but what if we can't get everything done by the 7th of December? And here again, I want to be very clear. The deadline is fixed. It will not be extended. But the most important step you can take before that date is registration. That is the priority. That is what SANEDI needs right now from you. Once you are registered, you will receive guidance on what comes next. You will have access to accredited professionals. You will be part of the national system, and the process of completing your certificate will follow in a structured way. So please don't let the fear of imperfection stop you from taking the first and most important step. As we go into the discussion today, I want to thank all the stakeholders who have already worked so hard on this. SANEDI, our accredited inspection bodies, the professional associations, the consultants and assessors, all of them have played an important role. I also want to acknowledge the building owners who have engaged proactively, and perhaps most importantly, the young graduates entering the space, helping us build the next generation of energy professionals. So let me close with this thought. EPCs are not a burden. They're not a punishment. They are quite simply a tool for better decision-making. They help us shine a light on how our buildings actually use energy. They help us plan. They help us save. And they help us future-proof our assets. And they help South Africa take a meaningful step towards a more efficient, more competitive, and more sustainable built environment. So again, my message today is very simple. Register your building. That is the gateway. That is the part that matters most right now. And once you're registered, the rest becomes manageable. We are here to support you. SANEDI is here to support you. And this conversation today is part of that support. Thank you very much. And I look forward to the discussion. Back to you, Chris.